Friends, we're live. It is CFLW, the show for this Friday, September the 26th. I hope you are doing well. This is going to be a forecast that we're going to be talking about with potential tropical implications to at least portions of our area. So I want to get into that and kind of get you covered for what I expect for the weekend ahead. We'll talk about local showers and storms and then much more on Invest 94L, which is likely to become Imelda as early as later today, and what is now Hurricane Humberto. Certainly the most active part of the hurricane season so far this year, with potential implications to portions of the state. So as we always get started, great to see you guys. I hope you're doing well. Please remember that CFLW is sponsored by the Lean Law Firm of Central Florida. They're your hometown homeowners insurance attorneys. It is storm season. You do get storm damage of any kind, be it wind, hail, or hurricane. They'll walk you through that insurance claim process, offering free consultation and policy reviews. It's leanonmelaw.com if you guys would like more information. So again, nice to see you. How we doing, Kevin? Good afternoon in Lakeland. Hi, Nancy. Wedgefield in the house at 92 degrees. 60% humidity, pretty steamy forecast outside of the implications from 94L. Hi, Neek. How you doing today? Hope you're doing well. And again, appreciate you guys tuning in. You have a specific question about the forecast, feel free to drop it in the chat below. As always, I love to hear from you guys. Want to talk about what's going to be happening. So let's start with the here and the now. All right. And that is going to be a line of showers and storms beginning to develop and work their way into our western areas. This is with a cold front that ultimately could be a factor in our weather here as we come over the next couple of days. So we got to monitor that situation for you guys. And again, showers and isolated rumble of thunder, not out of the question for us here. Again, just a little bit of lightning. Let me see if I can bring on the count. Again, just one little lightning strike at this point in time. But you can see the rain beginning to develop across I-75. Everything is working from west to east. So from Alachua to Gainesville, the eastern sides of Levy County into the western sides of Marion County, back down into Citrus County right now. So we have some rain over the Denellen area, right down Hernando, Lecanto, down 44 towards Inverness, and then sweeping on over towards Floral City and 41, and then a couple of spotty showers in portions of Hernando and Pasco counties as well. So a couple of little showers near Spring Hill. If I show you guys the composite radar here, which is going to give you a little bit better idea. This is the radar out of Melbourne. So the composite radar will show you guys what is to come. All right. So this is the leading edge of what's going to be a more widespread area of showers and storms to move into our western areas later today. Now, this is in association with a cold front, right? And this cold front could have vast implications as to how we play out what's going to be happening with 94L. You kind of have a mid-level trough out ahead of the actual cold front itself, which is going to be that blue line that you guys see. But ultimately this front, which is going to be sweeping across the southeast, could be a big factor in ultimately what happens with 94L as far as trying to keep it away from having direct impacts to most of our area. But in the short term here, we'll talk about the rain of the storms that'll be moving in. So if you live along our western areas today, it's going to be a little bit wetter forecast to begin the afternoon hours. And then that rain and, thunderstorm chance just kind of building throughout the day as this front and all that moisture begins to move into the area. All right, let's take a look at current temperatures that are on the board for you guys right now. I'm going to switch over to the visible satellite imagery and these live temperatures for you guys. We should pop on momentarily. Let's pause this up. Let me take you to those actual temperatures. So again, it's very area dependent, right? We've got a couple of spots right now that are in the upper 80s to right around 90 degrees. Most locations though, whoops, this is the wrong time. I knew we were at 90, there we go. Most locations are in upper 80s to right around 90 degrees, all right? And it's a little bit steamy outside. You've got dew points that are right around 70 degrees in most spots. Again, variably cloudy conditions, so anticipating that we're gonna have another pretty steamy afternoon. When you factor in the humidity, your feels like temperatures look like this, a lot of mid and upper 90s. Even a couple of spots that have hit triple digits, right? So the New Sparta Beach area in at 102 for feels like temperature, Tampa 98, about 96 in downtown Orlando, Inverness it feels like 100, even on over towards the Merritt Island area right now, feels like temperature of 100. That's a pretty steamy early afternoon for us here, and it's only going to climb. Obviously, as you get closer to where we have the showers and storms and the thicker clouds, temperatures there are only in the mid 70s, so a big difference. So, you know, this is a pretty good wallop of rain moving in as we get into the afternoon hours. Let's take a live look at our cameras. We'll start off with Winter Garden. Again, building a little bit of cloud coverage out there at this point in time. Broken decks of clouds. As always, my friends, you'll see your live temperatures and current conditions in your area scrolling at the bottom of your screen. Again, nothing imminent for rain here, the western sides of Orange County, but we're building out some of the clouds from earlier in the day. That's a beautiful shot from our lean log cam in Winter Park. Look at that bright blue kind of enveloped around a little bit of that extra cloud coverage early today. And then again, just some thin high cirrus clouds wisping in the higher altitudes, but beautiful shot there. East Coast is looking quiet at this point in time, just really flat clouds from our Conway cam as we look off towards the east. And in the Disney area right now, again, a little bit of building cloud coverage back south and to the west. But as far as rain in interior sections of Central Florida at the hour, not anticipating that to happen anytime soon. Hey, Blue Goose, how you doing? Appreciate you. Hope you're doing well today. 86 degrees, little 76% humidity value there in St. Augustine under rather cloudy skies. Hi, Rhea. Hope you're doing well as well. Thanks for tuning in. And again, hope everyone's having a nice Friday. Appreciate you guys taking a quick second and liking the live stream. And I appreciate you guys taking some of your day to join me here. All right, let's get into what's going to be happening with the tropics. All right, because ultimately this is going to play a role in our weather, at least in an indirect way over the weekend, but potentially a more direct fashion. You guys are probably well aware, and I even talked about this on Monday's live stream, that more than likely we're going to have some tropical interests to be talking about here in Central Florida for this weekend ahead. Well, we have Invest 94L. Now, Invest 94L is still somewhat disorganized, but now that the center is beginning to move north and west off of the island of Hispaniola, that's Haiti and the Dominican Republic, the eastern sides of Cuba, here's the southeast Bahamas, here's Turks and Caicos. Now we're going to start to see this more than likely begin to wrap up. The models are really all over the place still as to how quickly that happens, but all the models that I've looked at end up making this at least a tropical storm. So there's an extremely high likelihood that we are going to get Tropical Storm Imelda out of this area. Now, there is still some interaction with Hispaniola, which is a very mountainous island, if you guys don't know. There are some peaks that are above 11,000 feet. This island is known as a storm ripper, right? It takes these low-level centers and absolutely tears it apart. Now, when a system is this disorganized as 94L was, interestingly enough, it can kind of help to evolve it as it gets off of there, because the low-level center was never truly formed anyway, but there's still a lot of convection in a big chunk of 94L that is still over the island. So my thought with this is that we're going to see extremely slow development today. Still not out of the question that later today we get a depression, but more than likely, the first thing the Hurricane Center is going to do is actually make this what they call a potential tropical cyclone, right? I appreciate what the Hurricane Center tries to do with PTCs, but they end up becoming very confusing for the public. What a potential tropical cyclone is it's not developed yet. We think it's going to develop quickly, and it's also going to impact land within the next couple of days. So we're going to call it a potential tropical cyclone because we want to be able to put a track on it. We want to be able to be talking about local impacts and start to issue watches and warnings. When we have an invest like this, we don't have a track. We don't have any watches or warnings that are issued. So it could easily happen later today that they make this a potential tropical cyclone. And then that way they can have a cone. That way they can start issuing watches and warnings for portions of the Bahamas. So don't be surprised if the first thing you hear out of this is that this becomes a PTC, then you get a depression or right to a tropical storm, and we'll talk about the implications of that down the road. So again, looking at the visible satellite imagery, looking at the infrared satellite imagery, I've been looking at this all morning long. There really hasn't been any consolidation of the low-level wind field at this point in time, but you know, there is nothing that I see down the road that is going to more than likely stop this from evolving. You get into the Bahamas and you start to see sea surface temperatures that are in the mid and the upper 80s Fahrenheit still. They're 28, 29 plus degrees Celsius. Very hot bath water here, very little wind shear. We are likely to see a system wrap up pretty quickly once that happens. The red area that you see is the potential development area from the Hurricane Center. Notice that it also includes where the system is now. So the Hurricane Center feels like at any point in time, this could develop. And again, you can clearly see here on the visible and infrared satellite sandwich product, that cold front, that is relatively significant. That is going to be moving through the southeast and could have major implications on ultimately what happens with 94L/Imelda and our now Hurricane Humberto. So we do have a hurricane out of Humberto. This was expected. Humberto will likely continue to get very strong in the short term. We're just starting to see the eye clear out a little bit right now. You can see how quickly it developed. Now, it produced an eye and it quickly collapsed over itself. That does not mean that this system is collapsing at this point in time. It's probably already beginning its first eye wall replacement cycle, but more than likely after a little bit of a period where it stays at kind of in a constant state of maximum sustained winds, it is likely to quickly strengthen again. And the Hurricane Center has now upped it to a Cat 4. So this is a very dangerous storm out here. Again, we are fully expecting it at this point in time to make a recurve well before the United States East Coast. But it could be a major hurricane near Bermuda. At this point in time, it's Bermuda, just like with Gabrielle, that the only area that I am concerned about for potential either tropical storm or hurricane impacts. Hopefully it takes the errant track and it goes right in between North Carolina and Bermuda, and neither the East Coast nor Bermuda see direct impacts from the storm. But we got to monitor this one, especially now that it could become a Category 4. Now, the one thing, obviously, both of these storms are going to do are bring in some long period swells. We're going to kick up the surf and sea conditions. We're going to have some potential higher than normal tides. And even here on the east coast of Florida, we could see some of those impacts as well. The significant wave heights with Humberto could be 50 feet. And that is not your maximum wave heights. Those are kind of the sustained higher waves. That's what we call significant wave heights. You can easily double that when you're talking about the highest wave potential out of a major hurricane like this. So you could have some 100-foot waves in the Western Atlantic Basin. When you're talking about that kind of agitation of the water, it's going to throw a lot of wave action along the East Coast, even down into eastern Florida. So we're going to start to see things begin to get churned up, not only with Humberto, but obviously with what's going to be Imelda moving closer to us. I'm going to drop off the tropical storm formation area here, that red area, and I'm just going to bring on our spaghetti plots. These are your tropical models that are running like spaghetti, like fine hair spaghetti. There's a fairly decent cluster right now that goes right over the Bahamas and then paralleling our East Coast. We're still going to have a couple of outliers farther west. We're going to have a couple of outliers that want to do the quick turn east, right? At this point in time, the consensus is more to have a landfall on Monday, somewhere in the maybe as far southwest along the coast as Jacksonville, but more than likely Georgia, South Carolina, and potentially North Carolina. If you do notice, there are a few tropical models that put the brakes on Imelda right off the coast and then shoot it east towards Humberto. We'll talk about that in a second. It looks like a pretty implausible scenario, right? That this thing is just trucking along and then it gets right towards South Carolina, puts on the brakes a couple of 100 miles offshore, and then veers directly east. But there's two factors that could make that a probability, or at least a possibility. And that's the cold front that I've already mentioned, right? With its winds trying to push everything offshore. And then you have major hurricane Humberto, which is also trying to tug on the potential eastern sides of Imelda. And because Humberto is a lot stronger, it's going to have more influence. So both of those could be a factor. It's going to be a very interesting dance, my friends, a very interesting dance. Again, for us, if I just pause this real quickly and we look at your tropical spaghetti models, right? If we go from the Brevard County coastline, kind of the closest one would be about 50 miles, but the consensus average is somewhere around 150, all right? And again, this is going to put us on the weaker western side of the storm, all right? So as far as having full direct impacts, as long as we can keep Imelda that far off of our East Coast, we're likely not to have tropical storm or hurricane direct impacts even along our East Coast. We will probably have some squally conditions, and we're going to look at all the models coming up as well. Look, we're going to have some squally conditions. We're going to have some gusty winds from time to time. We're going to more than likely have some small craft advisories. We're certainly going to have some rip current statements. Those are already in effect. But, you know, there will be some implications to this storm along the East Coast if this is the track. But as far as direct either hurricane or tropical storm impacts, at this point in time, it's not likely. And you can really thank that cold front to keep the storm just off of our coast. If this front were in play, there's certainly scenarios where this wants to dive right over the peninsula. You know, again, I don't want to sit there and say it's a 100% chance that we do not have this storm right over us. That is not the likely scenario at this point in time. Hey, Gary, how you doing? Yeah, man, red hot, bone dry in Tampa. Gary, you're going to have an opportunity for some rain with this front. So I understand what you're saying, my friend. I would expect there to be some showers and storms developing here, and I hope you get some later today as well. Oh, we're getting serious here, Blue Goose. There's no doubt about it. Will 94L move fast after development if it arrives Monday, Tuesday? It should have a pretty good forward speed, Neek. It might be a little bit slow to begin with in the Bahamas, but I do, looking at the models, expect it to have fairly decent movement. Hard to tell exactly what that looks like, maybe 15 miles an hour on average, something like that. But when I show you the models, none of them really stall this thing out off our East Coast. There's kind of two scenarios that are going to come into play. The first one, and the most likely one today, right now, is that this continues in a fairly, direct northerly fashion, makes landfall sometime on Monday in the Carolinas, or it stalls out near the Carolinas and then pushes back off towards the east. At this point in time, I haven't seen anything that really tries to stall it out off of our East Coast where, like, you know, it sits there for 24, 48 hours and we're getting lashed with a lot of wind and rain along our East Coast. This should be, for us, a relatively progressive system. So I've got a lot of different models to show you guys. Oh, hey, Blue Goose. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Let's get the hearts out in chat for Blue Goose for his 1999 support of the channel. Appreciate you, my friend, someone who always watches the live streams, who always lets me know what's going on in St. Augustine, and is always a positive influence on the channel. So thank you, Blue Goose. I appreciate that very much. So let's get the thumbs up for my friend there. Hi, Chessie. How you doing? Oh, you're just a couple minutes late. No big deal. 90 degrees there in Spring Hill under partly cloudy skies. All right, appreciate that. Got my Publix green tea, diet green tea, mind you. By the way, before I move on, I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, my dad's birthday live on the stream. Believe it or not, today is my mom's birthday. So if you guys wouldn't mind taking a quick second and saying happy birthday to Lynn, that's Lynn with an E at the end, she would tell you that. I would really appreciate that because I know she's watching. So happy birthday, Mom. Appreciate you and Dad. Appreciate you guys, all your support and tuning in as they always do, as, you know, parents and that support. So I appreciate that. So happy birthday, Mom. All right, let's move on. Let me show you guys, now that we're closer in, we can look at a lot of the different models that I've got for you. So I want to run through this model suite and the potential impacts that we're going to see. So we're going to start off with our HER model. It's the high resolution refresh that I typically show you guys. But I got a lot of other high resolution models to pick up on for you as well. Let me go to reflectivity here. I was playing around with this significantly behind the scenes before I jumped on. So the domain of the HER model does extend into the Bahamas. It's a North American model, but that domain gets right here to the Southeast Bahamas. So we can start to see the evolution here of the storm. Let me get the model timeline on. And I've got a couple of different of these high resolution models to show you guys. So again, today's the 26th. As we get into Saturday and Sunday especially, we're more than likely going to have ourselves a named storm somewhere over the Bahamas. Now, some of the models that I'm going to show you are going to show you a quick consolidation of that low-level center over the Southeast Bahamas as early as tonight. Most models have it slowly developing throughout the day on Saturday, becoming a named storm sometime late Saturday, and at the very latest early on Sunday. So this is 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon on the HER model. First of all, if you have any interest in the Bahamas, obviously the weather is going to be atrocious this weekend, regardless of how strong this gets. We know we're going to get significant rain in this area. We know we're going to have very rough surf and sea conditions and marine interest. Everyone should be remaining in port. We're going to have some large period swells developing because, again, we're not just being impacted here by what's going to be Imelda. We're going to be impacted by these swells being produced by major Hurricane Humberto along the exposed waters of the Atlantic off the east side of the Bahamas and Turks and Caicos. It's a problem here. So, small craft and anyone should really be remaining in port. But you can start to see the consolidation here just southeast of Nassau, New Providence, near Cat Island and Eleuthera. And you can see that spin developing right there over the Eleuthera area. So as we get into Sunday morning, we're more than likely going to have a tropical storm here. Now, as we've mentioned, right? Where is all the deep convection and all the heaviest rain? It's on the east side of the center. This track, which parallels our east coast, is not the worst track. If you guys remember, who remembers Hurricane Matthew, right? Can't tell you exactly what year it was. It's been a heck of a long time, but Matthew was a very powerful hurricane which skirted our east coast, but all of the significant winds were east of the center. And even though it's going to make it closer, Matthew made a closer approach than what Imelda is likely to do, but it's a good, if we want to try and reference a storm, right? Even a stronger Matthew, really kept all of the worst weather just off of our east coast. But sloppy system. And then as we get into early on Sunday morning, again, we'll start to see the potential outer feeder bands begin to work their way into the western areas. Another model that I typically don't show you guys is the Weather Research Forecast Office model. They have a couple of different domains, but this is one that is very good with localized hurricane conditions. So this is a high resolution model, kind of just like the HWRF. It's the Weather Research and Forecasting Office. Just to kind of give you guys a couple of different ideas. This one, and I do put some weight into this model, by the way, has this one developing a little bit quicker, right? Still fairly broad through the day tomorrow, but late tomorrow night into Sunday. Now, there's not much of a difference in track. It's slightly farther west. Still the broader spin. Again, the HUR was here, again, a little bit quicker. The HUR was here kind of 8 a.m. Sunday morning. At 1 a.m., we're a little bit west. And then as we get to 8 a.m., we're just a little bit west overall. But if I zoom this out, the implications again are starting Sunday morning. We're going to start to get some of these feeder bands beginning to work in. Now, even with this, it's likely to keep the sustained tropical storm force winds just off of our east coast. If there is an area that might get brushed with sustained tropical storm force winds, it would be like down here, Port St. Lucie, Jupiter, West Palm, maybe as far south as Fort Lauderdale, just because the coastline sticks out a little bit farther east. There is just this slight curve back west of the coastline as you get into Indian River County, and obviously Brevard County, the Capes stick out just a little bit more, but we're tailing away slightly. But feeder bands, squally weather, some gusty winds beginning Sunday morning is what I expect. And then overall, the impacts from whatever we're going to get out of Imelda will be Sunday and Monday in our area. More than likely kind of throughout the day Sunday, and then beginning to drop off a little bit throughout the day on Monday. But the farther north along the coast that you live, up towards where Blue Goose is in St. Augustine and Jacksonville areas, you will continue to see some impacts throughout most of Monday as well. So let's look at the winds associated with this model. These are going to be your sustained winds. And again, you guys will clearly see, when I say high resolution, you guys will clearly see what I'm talking about here, right? I really wish that these high resolution models were worldwide. Obviously on my Media Mundo channel, when we're talking about tropical storms and hurricanes and stuff, there are some high resolution models that are available. I don't have all of that available on my weather system. I wish I did, but I just wish overall that these really high resolution models in the short term and on what we call the mesoscale or the small scale were more readily available. I think it would be fantastic for forecasting. Hey, Kish, thank you, my friend. First of all, Jumping back into the chat, I appreciate all of those who wish my mom a happy birthday. I know she's getting a kick out of it right now. Kish, I appreciate you very much for the Venmo. Let's get the hearts out in chat for Kish as well. Again, that's another way to directly support myself and the channel. You can see that in the description below. So thank you, Kish, for doing that as well. Hey, Amy, 2016, thank you. Yeah, I knew it was a while ago, man. You know, honestly, I almost have a little bit of PTSD when it comes to these storms, and especially with the tornadoes when I worked in Oklahoma City for 7 years. You almost kind of got to block it out of your mind. So here is this same model that I just showed you, and it clearly shows you the evolution of the storm, and that we're going to get, more than likely throughout the day Sunday, a tropical storm that will continue to grow. And it is not out of the question that off of our East Coast, Imelda becomes a hurricane. So if we take a look at these are sustained winds into, this thing will let me get all the way out there, into 8 a.m. Sunday morning. And again, this is really just kind of 24 hours of it starting to really get its act together. If we look at the sustained winds around Nassau, we are looking at winds that are already getting into that 50+ mile range, right? Again, if you know anyone who lives in the Bahamas, or you have any interest in the Bahamas, especially northern Bahamas, because the storm should continue to evolve and get stronger in these areas like Eleuthera and Nassau and Andros, the Berry Islands, Abacos, Freeport, obviously, you know, Bimini as well. These are areas that are going to be more directly impacted by the storm. Hi, Rhea. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. $9.99 super stickers. Thank you very much. Let's get the hearts out for Rhea as well. A big supporter of both Media Mundo and Central Florida Weather Live. Thank you very much, Rhea. I appreciate you very much for doing that. That's awesome. Thank you. Guess I'm going to show chat. Where'd my chat go? There we go. I'm hitting all these buttons because I want to give you guys a thumbs up, and then I'm just clicking buttons, which is never any good. So again, Sunday morning already, solid tropical storm, sustained winds, 50 miles an hour. Starting to push some 20, 25, even 30-mile-an-hour winds sustained along the coast. As I've mentioned again, if you have interests, you know, from the Jupiter, West Palm Beach area back down towards Fort Lauderdale, even by Sunday morning, they could start to see sustained winds of around 30 miles an hour. Obviously, you got to get to 39 plus, but it's not going to shock me if ultimately we also get tropical storm watches for portions of the southeast side of the state. I don't know if that's going to happen for Central Florida. I think it's very touch and go over the next couple of days. If we look at wind gusts, and let me see if this one has, it does. So I'm just going to do a snapshot of the wind gusts here. Again, same model. Let me clear this off. So wind gusts become a problem because now you're starting to get darn near hurricane force winds gusting in the northern and northwest Bahamas. Again, Eleuthera, Governor's Harbor. By the way, more than likely I'll be live on Media Mundo. If you guys haven't tuned into that channel, I actually have a live camera in Governor's Harbor, okay? We have a live camera in Long Island. We also have a live camera in Key West. So, you know, when the storm is cranked up here, I'll more than likely be on live, and we'll get an idea what's happening. But this would not be a good scenario for portions of the Bahamas. Again, these are wind gusts. So when we look at wind gusts here, again, Sunday morning, you're already getting into some 30 to maybe even 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts along our southeast coast. Now for Central Florida, right, not nearly as bad yet. The storm's too far away, but conditions deteriorating throughout the day on Sunday. Again, if you guys are just tuning in, I still don't expect there to be direct impacts as of right now, because when we look at, again, you know, the spaghetti plot models, they're about, on average, 150 miles off of our coast. But squally weather on the western side, you know, small craft advisories, maybe even gale warnings for the offshore waters, all of that is still well into play. So those are a couple of the models. Let me see what else I want to show you guys here. Let's go to the GFS long range. I'm just going to spin this back out to the wide view, guys, and then switch over to, and we're going to talk about rainfall as well. That's something I want to make sure I don't leave out, because ultimately that could be a factor too. So let's see, the first is Monday, or excuse me, Wednesday. I'll just go out to Friday the 8th, or the 3rd. I am talking nonsense behind the scenes right here. We're going to go out a week. We're going to go out to the 3rd. Again, There still is quite an interesting scenario that could play out with these two storms. These storms are close enough in proximity where some of the models do want to have them interacting a little bit, right? You guys might have heard of that. It's called the Fujiwara effect, where two storms are in close enough proximity that they do sometimes some kind of a dance where they spin around each other. Now, typically, if there's really interaction like that, these storms have to be in somewhat close proximity and strength because neither of them are really able to impact the other, and they just kind of spin around an elliptical kind of center. But you know, I've seen one or two models do that in the last couple of days. The more than likely scenario is that if Humberto interacts with Imelda, Humberto is going to be so much stronger than Imelda, relatively speaking, as a Cat 4 or Cat 3 hurricane to a high-end tropical storm or a low-end hurricane, that it's actually going to try and, one, potentially rip apart the eastern side of Imelda, right? Because it's going to try and pull that wind field into its western side, or it could yank Imelda with it. And that is a scenario that plays out in some of the models, where Imelda actually gets pulled away off of the East Coast for the two factors that I've mentioned, the cold front and the influence of Humberto moving away. It almost yanks the storm off. Now, when we look at the latest run of the GFS model, this is still the most likely scenario that you have, again, a high-end tropical storm or a weak hurricane beginning to move into the Carolina coastline on Monday. This is Monday at 5 o'clock, and you see that with landfall potentially over South Carolina. But look, again, we're not bullseyeing anything at this point in time. But it's not going to shock me if the first track from the Hurricane Center has it somewhere with landfall either in South Carolina or maybe North Carolina. Now, again, we're on the western weaker side. So when we look at the GFS model, as it approaches and moves up our East Coast, again, we're more brushed indirectly than anything, with some squalls, some gusty winds from time to time, locally heavy rainfall, but we're not going to see the persistent tropical storm conditions or certainly the hurricane conditions if it does develop. Then it could, unfortunately, be a heavy rainmaker for the Carolinas and the Tennessee Valley because there's an upper level low that is forecast to kind of be out here, and it could kind of just trap the storm behind it for a bit. So we could see some locally heavy rainfall, again, over the Piedmont, portions of the Tennessee Valley, and the Southeast in general, if Imelda plays this out. But I'll go back over to our spaghetti plots to show you, again, right at the last second, the 23rd hour, if you will, is there an opportunity that Imelda stalls and gets pulled back east? It's plausible. I'll be very interested to see the next suite of models that'll be running later this afternoon to get an idea for that. Let me jump over to the chat. I know I've been not neglecting you guys, but I was in my zone there. Amy says, Matthew was my first hurricane. Ian destroyed my house. Yeah. I hear you, Amy, and I'm sorry to hear about Ian. Ian and Nicole were two significant storms, and obviously in the more recent, we had Helene and Milton. We've had some damaging storms here. And of course, I've got you guys covered here. If this storm is making more of a beeline to Central Florida, I'll be covering it live right here on this channel. We've got our camera network. We've got everything ready to go. I promise you we are prepared for whatever situation and scenario that Imelda wants to bring us. I'm very hopeful that this storm stays off of our East Coast and that, again, we have more indirect impacts, but we're prepared if this wants to take a turn west and brings us more direct impacts. Will this stay a tropical storm or potentially a hurricane? Neek, I think it's right on that border. Most of the models that I've seen have it either at least as a high-end tropical storm, but a few do push it into Category 1 strength before landfall, right? And again, if it does stay offshore, the longer it stays offshore and slows down, the higher opportunity it has to become a hurricane in these very warm waters of the Western Atlantic Basin just off our East Coast. But great question. So I would expect at least a high-end tropical storm, if not a low-end hurricane. There's no doubt about it. North Carolina and some areas are still recovering. They don't need, some rain is fine. They don't need the flooding rains, anything situated over their area for any length of time. Any projected impact for the U.S. Virgin Islands? So the U.S. Virgin Islands, no, they're good. They had, so the U.S. Virgin Islands had some impacts as 94L was developing in the form of some locally heavy rainfall. And I covered that on the Meteorologist channel, but it is now well away. So the U.S. Virgin Islands are just fine. Turks and Caicos will be included in what the Southeast Bahamas are seeing right now, and that's some locally heavy rain, which I want to get into. That's the next thing I wanted to step into here. So I'm going to go back over to the HRRR model, and I'm going to bring up rainfall. And then we're going to look at, I made a graphic for the overall implications out of this. Again, give me just 1 second. By the way, just real quickly, wind gusts on the HRRR model, just to give you guys an idea if we're looking at a couple of different models. I showed you guys that Weather Research and Forecast Office model. This is the HRRR model. Remember, the HRRR model is slightly farther east. So right now, it keeps a little bit more of those 25, 30 mile an hour winds just a little bit farther off the southeast coast by Sunday morning. But I would expect it, again, we're as far out as that model run goes, I would expect it down the road to start to spin in some of those 30 mile an hour winds. But just again, the development of where this is going to have major implications. Obviously, any farther west development will bring a little bit more significant impacts to our East Coast. And it is a fine line. It could be 15, 20 miles, and it could make a pretty good difference. All right, so total precip. And again, this is just through Sunday morning, right? But to get you an idea that even out ahead of this, we could have some decent rainfall that could be in this area. So I don't want to discount, and again, 8 inches, I don't know about that. This is the HRRR model, but you can clearly see that along the west coast, as that cold front moves in, you're going to get some spots of some pretty heavy rain. Someone was talking about Tampa earlier. Let's see here. Again, I am still working on this chat. It was Gary, said it was bone dry in Tampa. Gary, I have a better opportunity. Humberto is forecast to become a Category 4. Yep. It's the newest update from the Hurricane Center. It is now a hurricane. If you don't know, it is now forecast to become a Cat 4. Again, all you need is a Cat 3 to become a major hurricane, but there you go. So we're going to have some pretty wet weather ahead of even what Imelda is likely to bring us. So if we're already dropping between now and Sunday morning a few inches of rain along the East Coast, I am a little bit more concerned about the potential for some flooding and some flash flooding, even if we only get a couple of additional inches. So this front is going to be a weather maker for us in the short term. And if I show you guys, I don't think I actually showed you the reflectivity over the next 24 hours in our area. So let me do that. So again, outside of Imelda, here comes your cold front. Again, we have this trough, the mid-level part of the system coming through first. That's the rain and storms we're going to get today, but we're likely to have the actual front arrive on Saturday. And that's going to bring us another round of showers and storms. And some of that could be locally heavy rain. Again, all the rain that I just showed you through Sunday morning has nothing to do with Imelda. Imelda is still way down here. And look how that front and the moisture on the northern side of Imelda begin to already interact by Sunday morning. Thank gosh it's offshore, because that's going to be a cluster of significant rain there. But we're going to get a couple of waves of storms locally here, guys, later this afternoon and again tomorrow with the actual front, and then more rain that'll be coming on Monday as well. When we look at the potential for significant rainfall in the area, so this is your excessive rainfall risk. Today, again, closer to where the front is and that boundary up towards I-10. If we look at the excessive rainfall for tomorrow, now it slips a little bit farther south as the front comes through. Again, what this means is this green area is there's a 5 to 10% chance of exceeding flash flood criteria in this area, right? We could get some flood advisories, but flash flooding means we've got imminent problems with flooding or it's already occurring. And that does include the Orlando metro area and a lot of our central and northern sides of Central Florida for your Saturday. And again, this is outside of Imelda. Then we get into our Sunday, and now we have the entire East Coast, right? So, you know, the Climate Prediction Center building in the opportunity that Imelda brings us some significant rain. So it goes all the way down the East Coast. And then for Monday, we don't have anything as of yet. Monday, again, is likely to be the Carolina landfall. right? So our most significant rain is likely to occur on Sunday, and then things begin to kind of get a little bit quieter throughout the day on Monday. This is the overall impacts I expect. Let me be clear. This is a first blush look because at least as of right now, and if anyone sees it from the Hurricane Center, if anything's changed, let me know. I mean, I'm going to go on the website right now. They did a 1 o'clock update. Humberto's 90-mile-an-hour winds. This is still a 90% chance. It's 94L. Nothing has changed, meaning that we don't have a PTC yet, and I don't see them issuing a PTC. So before any of that, we don't have any guidance from the Hurricane Center. So this is all my forecasting and what I would expect out of this based on everything that I've seen. So I'm going to expect there to be some 2 to 4 inch rainfall totals along the East Coast. Again, that's in addition to anything we're going to get in the next couple of days. Now, locally higher, absolutely. Inland, an average of 1 to 3, but there'll be some locally higher spots. In general, obviously, the farther east on the state that you live, the more impacts you're going to see from some of that rain. Now, winds, 15 to 25 easily. There'll more likely be some higher gusts, especially, again, farther down the coast. So Brevard, Indian River counties, more than likely will have more gusty conditions Sunday compared to Volusia and Flagler and St. Johns and Duval counties, but they could still get into it later in the day on Sunday. Seas near shore will be building to 5 to 8 feet and likely be well over 8 feet offshore near the Gulf Stream waters and probably in the double-digit wave heights. And again, the swells are going to be an issue. My suggestion is if you have any plans to be on a boat on Sunday along the East Coast, I would probably have some alternate plans. Tomorrow still looks okay, but by Sunday morning, things are really going to get churned up out there. High risk of rip currents already out there along all beaches all weekend long. Getting in the water is not advised. If you want to get into your knees, fine. Please check in with local lifeguards. Red flags are likely to be flying along a lot of our East Coast. Then the question I think we have is, and this is going to be tracked and strength dependent, is could we see a minor storm surge along our East Coast? I don't see that as a high likelihood, especially in Central Florida, potentially up towards Jacksonville. They might be included on the far southern extent of where the Hurricane Center would put a storm surge potential. Again, once we get a track, you're likely going to see all those products, those products will be issued, but there's going to be some inherent storm surge associated with Imelda. So maybe as far south as Jacksonville, but I put it in because I can't fully discount that. And then more than likely, we're going to get some higher tide cycles as well. Now, could this cause a little bit of beach erosion? Could this cause some problems? It's a possibility. Those are a little bit more in the question marks. The rip current risk, the long period swells, the higher sea conditions near shore and offshore, those are all guarantees. And then my rainfall forecast, I think, is, probably about good. There could be some 6 to 8 inch rainfall totals in a couple of spots. I can't rule that out. Imelda should be moving fairly quickly. So, we're not going to have a storm that sits over us for a couple of days where we're going to be getting, more than 10 inches of rain in any spots. Does anyone have any specific questions? Let me get back over to the chat real quick. I appreciate you all tuning in. First of all, if you haven't as of yet, thanks for taking a quick second, hitting that like button. If you haven't subscribed to CFLW, please do so. I do these Monday and Friday live shows, but please remember, this is only a live channel, and I'm live when there's impactful weather. That's localized daily storms, if they get a little bit rowdy, and obviously any tropical weather as well. If you guys join me for storms like Helene and Milton as I cover them live here on the channel, obviously if Imelda is going to pose us any risk, I'll be covering Imelda live here on the channel as well. All right, to the chat we go. And again, part of this is because this is all touchscreen and it does not like me. Hi Fiona, how you doing? Hot here in Orlando at the moment drive. Look, it's going to be steamy. Right? It is going to be steamy when we don't have the rain. There's no doubt about that. Winter Garden, again, still building in a little bit of clouds, still beautiful. From the Lean Log Cam there in Winter Park, there's Conway, Disney. We all look pretty good. Again, building showers and storms a little bit later in the day. We'll get back over to our live radar here. I'm going to bring that back on live. And again, if you guys live along our western areas, you are seeing a little bit of rain. There's some of the showers there over the western sides of Marion County. Just a little spottiness. Eastern Citrus back into Hernando and Pasco. Any rain coming for Kissimmee? Therese, we will likely get some spotty showers later today with our first kind of mid-level part of this front coming in. it won't be lined up completely, but there's a decent chance for some showers later in the day in Kissimmee, and then even a slightly better chance for a few showers and storms on Saturday. So again, still more scattered in nature for us the next couple of days, but that opportunity will be there. And then Imelda could bring us some squally conditions even as far inland as I-4. Imelda sounds like Marcos. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? If the track changes from where will you go live? Yes. Yep, absolutely. No doubt about it. If there are any potential direct impacts, I will. Now, again, likely I will see you guys Monday anyway. We'll see how that plays out. If I feel like I need to come on live, like maybe during the day on Sunday, I will. Obviously, I weigh that back and forth with my live coverage on Media Bundo. But if there is any direct impacts to Central Florida, that supersedes anything, and I'll be live on this channel. I don't know if it's an interesting forecast, Fiona, because there's a lot of players in the forecast, if you will. It's a very delicate dance to the fact that we have a hurricane already that's going to become a major hurricane with a developing system that is likely to become a high-end tropical storm. Their close proximity to each other, this cold front, an upper level low in the eastern and northeast side of the United States that all could play factors in how these storms move. There's a high uncertainty. There's no doubt about it, right? I feel a little bit better than I did yesterday as far as how these might play out. And again, what we really want to have happen is we want this front, which is a fairly significant front here in late September, and you can clearly see a line. By the way, here's a really cool shot. If you guys want to see what this front is going to do, let me show you the water vapor imagery. This is the amount of moisture in the atmosphere. The greens are moisture-laden air. You can clearly see that near Invest 94L and along our front. The red is the dry air. Look at this trough digging into the northern Gulf, all right? That's how far that drier air is coming. So you're going to get a big push of drier air, and that's going to shove this front off of the coast. So we are likely to see, again, this front make its way off the coast with a lot of drier air. Now, two scenarios out of this. It continues to stop Imelda and then push it back offshore, or unfortunately, a bad scenario would be it's able to eke inland, but it can't go much farther than that, and then it sits over the Carolinas, and it produces a lot of rain in areas that don't need a lot more rain. Obviously, they've recovered somewhat from Helene, but you just don't want to see additional problems in spots that have already, been impacted so significantly by Helene. And I know some friends who live up in Western North Carolina, and things aren't completely back to normal. So you just don't want to see this storm stall over that area. But those are the two more likely scenarios out of Imelda. At this point in time, because of this front and because of, the other factors in play, we don't really have a higher end scenario to push it back west. More than likely, it's north or even east. That's good for us. Let's keep it 100, 150 miles off our coast. We should be generally okay. Amphitheater St. Augustine. I hope so too. What time is it? When is that concert, Blue Goose? Oh no, Ray is asking that. How about St. Augustine be tomorrow? St. Augustine tomorrow should be okay. Now, again, could there be some localized showers and storms? Absolutely, Rhea. But will there be any impacts from Jacksonville tomorrow? No, no. Not a completely dry forecast, though, for Jacksonville tomorrow with this front. So, but nothing from Imelda. Fujiwara, I believe that's the name of the scientist who first discovered it. As these storms interact with each other, they can actually spin around each other in kind of an elliptical form, or one just says, I'm stronger than you, and starts to pull the other one into it and rips it apart. Rips apart the weaker one. Yep, no doubt about it. All right. I believe we've gone through everything that I want to go through here. I don't think there's anything more. We can go back over to the visible satellite imagery here if you guys. Let's see here. And I always just love checking in with you guys live. So you guys see how there's a big blow up of lightning right there? It's probably an indication that the core of the lowest level winds are beginning to get offshore. And because you notice how all of that other lightning was pretty just kind of widespread. You have some of the outer feeder bands of lightning, but now you have this uptick here. There we go. I mean, it's still really sloppy, but the fact that there's a concentrated area of lightning near that X marks the spot low gives me an indication that now the lowest part of the storm is fully offshore. And again, it's moving north. Pretty good outflow on the northeast side still. Again, you have a chunk of this storm that is way back here, but with these developing systems, it can leave behind some of this activity. It's not like it has to pull all of this in. It could redefine itself as a much smaller center in the southeast Bahamas, and this is just convection that's left behind and will ultimately dissipate and never get pulled back into the storm. I've seen that happen plenty of times. Okay, man, we've gone on for a while. So let's recap. We have ourselves 94L, which is likely to become Imelda over the weekend over the Bahamas. Forecast to at least become a high-end tropical storm, if not even a hurricane. The red area that you see is the potential tropical development area from the Hurricane Center. Your forecast models, the consensus is to ride it up our east coast with the most impacts to Central Florida on Sunday. But staying far enough shore, we are unlikely to see sustained tropical storm conditions along the East Coast and certainly hurricane conditions. This cold front is still going to be a factor in our weather in the next couple of days with some showers and storms there, but ultimately will be a friend and keep Imelda offshore. Now, I'll be monitoring the situation. Obviously, if there's potential more direct impacts to Central Florida, I'll be back on live. And obviously, if there's localized storms over the weekend as well. Now, there is a dance that I have to play with monitoring the situation and going on live in the Media Mundo channel. So keep an eye out for posts that I make on this channel that might give you guys an idea of maybe I'm going live earlier than I expect, or maybe Monday's live has to be pushed back a little bit because I'm going to be live on Media Mundo. We'll all play it out. But obviously, if there's any direct impacts to Central Florida from Imelda, I'll be on live on this channel when that is occurring. Thanks for taking a quick second, hitting that like button for me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you want these live updates across Central Florida on Monday and Friday, and of course, anytime there's impactful storms, please subscribe right now. I appreciate Rhea. I appreciate Blue Goose for helping out. Thank you, Kish, for the Venmo as well. I'll check that out and always give you guys a personalized thank you on that. So again, thank you for all of my friends who have supported the channel in that way, reinvesting back into the channel to bring you guys even better coverage. Have a great rest of your Friday. Obviously, I'm closely monitoring the situation, and I'll see you guys soon on the channel. Take care. Get off camera.